Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jimmy Carroll. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Tech B2B Marketing, and welcome to Automate Live, day one in the afternoon session. I have the pleasure of being joined today by Steve Kinney from Smart Vision Lights, Jason Covar from The Imaging Source, and Georgy from Mid-Opt. Guys, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Glad to have you here. We are here today to talk about emerging trends and applications in machine vision. So I thought I'd start it light and ask you guys what you're most excited about in machine vision right now. And maybe, Steve, if you could start, that'd be great.
Sure. I think the easy answer to that is there's a concentrated effort in this country to onshore manufacturing right now. And of course, robotics, automation, and vision are key and integral to making that work for everybody, making lower prices for consumers, making more productivity for our integrators and our end users that are manufacturers. And it's a great time to be in this industry and helping with that effort. And then within that, we see more than ever, new applications, chemical-free farming, vertical farming, things affecting our food supply, and outside of our normal machine vision areas, which are, it's really exciting to be in and helping facilitate those kind of technologies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think two things, really. One, I think there's a lot of collaboration, right? Our community has always been close, working with one another in different ways. I think you're starting to see that work more closely coupled, which allows to be more specialized and go after, more unique edge applications and opportunities. And then also some of the technology, right? Some of the technology is emerging with AI and with other embedded technologies that also allow you to be more specialized. So,
Yeah, I would agree with what Steve said with onshoring manufacturing. There's going to be a need for increased quality control and the use of AI in these applications for quicker decisions and for understanding the data that you're getting. So that's I'm very excited about that.
That's great. Great insight from you guys. Thank you. So one thing I like to talk about a lot is industrial automation systems are progressing rapidly, right? But they're only as good as the components that make up the system. And today we have an interesting group of people, intentionally, right? Somebody from an optics company, a camera company, and a lighting company. What are some ways that your companies have had to advance your technologies to keep pace with customer needs today? And anyone can start.
Well, I think Jason kind of let it in with his previous answer there. More than ever, obviously the three of us know each other and work together, and we have to work each component together, whether it's a smart camera or a component-based system. But more than ever, whether it's a smart camera or component-based system, the components have to work together. So not only do you see kind of efforts towards ease of use and plug and play, but in the background, you see us as manufacturers working together. You're going to start seeing lights and cameras communicate directly in the background, almost like an embedded system, but coming out into the component world. And, those are necessary to bring the kind of functions that our end users need to bring it and take the technology to the next level and get the best performance.
yeah, absolutely. So as Steve mentioned, one of those ways from a camera manufacturer perspective are standards, right? We have standards that allow hardware to integrate and to play with other hardware more seamlessly. I think now you're seeing the technology get down to smaller form factor. So you're still able to, work component and component. But I think we're seeing smaller, more specialized systems. And that's on the embedded side, particularly with AI, because it allows you to bring it closer to production, right? So there are some technologies that are very good at the big applications, but there are certainly some that are in between. And I think we're getting closer to solving some of those with AI.
Yeah, as an optical component manufacturer, we're pretty manufacturer agnostic. Our components go on everything. But we're seeing a lot of demand from customers in terms of lowering that lead time, increasing customizability. They want their logos on there. They want a certain shape and size. And so, to address those needs, we're having to expand our production facilities, add production facilities. So that's some of the things that we're seeing.
Interesting. So I want to ask about some applications, right? And I think it was Milton Gary at the A3 Business Forum was talking about, in a lot of ways, industrial automation is only beginning. It's been around for a long time, but it's only beginning. It's ripe for growth. In the last few years, what are some applications that have emerged that you have found particularly fascinating? And I'm talking about the kind of thing you might go home and tell your family about or your friends about. Steve, you touched a little bit on, vertical farming, but what are some others?
Well, one of the things, as a side note to that, one of the things I've told people for years, the fascinating thing about working here is not the products I'm working with, but what the people that do with those products. On a daily basis, we see new and whiz-bang things. So we see them going into medical applications where now things like multispectral or hyperspectral are being used more to advance medicine and other areas. And I've been involved in a few of those cases. Of course, the farming and things like that are really key because increasing food source, food safety, reducing chemicals in the environment. I think our food sources, largely the food itself and processing, is inspected heavily as well, but you're seeing more and more as these technologies advance them being applied to make our food safer and other things like that. So all of those things are just whiz bang. I sat with a researcher once on a plane, and he was using a telescope with one of the high-speed machine vision cameras at 1,000 frames a second and watching particles of ice collide in Saturn's rings, for example, to understand why there's particles out there that are usually larger than a fist but smaller than a basketball, not in between. So we see the whole gamut of stuff out here.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, there's many very interesting applications. I think that's what keeps a lot of us engaged in the industry that we love so much, that every day is different. We see very interesting things come across our desks. But for me, I've taken a little bit different approach. I think we're trying to concentrate on location, tracking, tracing. I think from a business perspective, I think this is where there's a lot of growth, right? It's easy to kind of migrate towards what's neat and trending. But in terms of overall numbers, I think we're trying to create more lean systems that are really strong on the core. And that comes back to the reshoring and other aspects of manufacturing, but localization, identification, quality, and doing that quicker is where we're at.
I think for us, one of the coolest application segments has been automated drones. Drones are being used for agriculture inspection, for delivery, automated delivery, and then also they're expanding the use for search and rescue missions too, which is really cool because drones can cover large areas. You can send out multiple drones to inspect, really dense environments to help find people that are lost. So that's been a really cool application as well.
Well, you guys both have young kids, right? So has there been anything in particular that you said, hey, this might be interesting to you, or do they kind of just focus on the robots like so many others?
Yeah, the robots still remain the most interesting. Yeah, it's, I think that's always something neat to take home from these events.
Yeah.
Is videos and pictures of the robots.
Yeah.
Something I think about is my kids, your kids probably will not get a driver's license as we know it and drive a car. Like that's something I think about all the time.
Right. Yeah.
I want to ask about specific technologies right now. So, Steve, we talk about these things a lot, right? AI, deep learning, 3D, SWIR, multispectral, hyperspectral. A lot of these technologies are more accessible and less expensive than ever before. And in a lot of ways, it feels like some of these technologies are now kind of coming of age. What are some technologies that you could see breaking through in the next couple of years?
Well, certainly the advancements for us in focusing on lighting, the advancements of LEDs, they continue kind of like what you saw in cameras. So LEDs get more efficient, brighter, better spectrum all the time. And then within the spectrum in monochrome LEDs, we're seeing that expand. So, for a long time, non-visible imaging was talked about. It largely meant near infrared for us, especially in the CCD world. Now we have the Sony IMX 990 type sensors, the quantum dot sensors, SWIR sensors from SWIR Vision Systems and others out there. And, coupled with what we can do in the light sources, non-visible imaging now for a standard camera can include all the way from 850 nanometer near infrared all the way out to about 2 micron SWIR, and also in the UV on the short side of things. So we see those coming. We see every day the most advancement being out there. Advancement is incremental in the visible, much more rapid out in the non-visible because they're catching up, if you will. More things offered. Medium wave IR LEDs are starting to look interesting now, whereas before they were too hot and too low output to be real useful here. Couple that with some things going on in the world, like halogen being added to the RoHS list, and we now see, Europe especially losing that as a key source that's often used for hyperspectral or multispectral imaging out in that area, and is putting more demand on these technologies, and LEDs are answering with that demand and money being poured in there.
Yeah, and I think from the camera side, I'd mentioned a few months back when we last spoke, and I think on the CMOS chip side, there is some advancements. To Steve's point, it was, kind of all of our technologies together, where it was lighting, camera, and filters, a few years ago, and now we're advancing in lighting, filters are advancing, and then the CMOS chips themselves are getting more intelligent, able to do more things as a standard chip, right? So it's I think that's a big investment from the camera side. I think putting all together in smaller form factor, and coupling that with software that's able to think quicker, learn quicker, and correct mistakes sooner in the process. It's an exciting time for everyone.
For sure.
I think to add what Jason said there about the sensors, if you've been watching, G-Pixel's coming out with a lot of new stuff now, some really interesting stuff. I actually have to go dig in a little bit, but they recently announced a sensor that had like 4 storage registers behind the pixel without having to read it. So they can, if I read it correctly, they can store, dump real fast. And that's important because they need to get their exposure time, and they can dump it much quicker than they can read it out the camera. But as we're talking about new and emerging technologies, computational imaging is really key in here, and whether computational imaging might be as simple as imaging in 4 different multispectral spectrums. It might be doing photometric stereo, where we rotate the light at 4 quadrants or even 8 quadrants around there, and those are limited by grabbing those shots and the frame rates of the cameras. Of course, there's faster and faster CMOS cameras, but I look at things like G-Pixel and wonder how far ahead that they're thinking about this, because I see the potential for that kind of sensor to be used and do these grab those 4 images, at least exposure-wise, in less than a millisecond, which used to be just a normal one-shot exposure time.
Absolutely, and this is happening on the chip itself, right? Which it frees up the whole system. So either you had from the compute side, you take a trade-off, but then you needed the compute to be able to do that. So if they're able to get this correct, you are able to run that on embedded. And that's the name of the game there is latency, right? So we're trying to reduce latency in the system. So the chips are getting better, and it's starting to really line up, I think, in that world.
And while it isn't exclusively machine vision, I think from a consumer standpoint, all these technologies are going to converge for VR, AR, augmented reality. I think it's going to be all about a pair of glasses that you can wear. You can look at the world and see data in real time. And that's going to be exciting for all of us and the consumer.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
On the topic of something that's maybe not specifically machine vision, but has a tie-in, of course, I do have a couple specific technologies I have to ask about, and one of them is obviously AI. So AI means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, whether it's in the general world, people who might be afraid of AI, or in the industrial space, which more targeted. In the last couple of years, AI has really started to settle in and become a really valuable tool for a lot of different manufacturers and end users. But when you guys think of AI right now, what comes to mind first?
I'm laughing because there's multiple sides to that. I think all of us would agree the hype curve is one of the things that comes out. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of interest. It's a buzzword. And there should be. There's a lot of capability. Don't get me wrong. But bringing that together, reducing it to practice, and putting it out there is the challenge for all of us, keeping customer demand, customer expectations in line with what we can provide. But it certainly is very key to us. I think all of us touched a little bit on it, and especially Jason and Georgy there. It's important to recognize some of these things. AI is only as good as the image itself, and all these technologies play into that. And in particular, AI can benefit from things like computational imaging and other multi-shot techniques. And what I find a lot is these guys are out here deploying AI on these Jetson processors out here on the edge, but they don't have a lot of traditional power. So something like doing photometric stereo, which is relatively routine nowadays, is somewhat problematic in the AI world. They haven't figured out, oh, I want to use that. Tying all this together and maybe what we're saying about integrating systems, I see more and more there's going to be automated systems to get the right image to bring to the AI. And the right image may not be just a visible color image, right? Might be multispectral, might be non-visible, might be computational imaging of any number of techniques out there. And that just gives more power to the AI to look and see the features that need to be seen and eliminate the ones that don't need to be seen, critical for the application, and tie it all together and make it more powerful.
Yeah, and I think the biggest is the kind of the edge cases and things that weren't able to be captured classically, right? It's able to learn them quicker, which allows you to see an error or an imperfection earlier in the process. So I think this is one of the biggest benefits. I think also when you talk about the models and what is out there readily available, they're going to get better, and they're going to be able to be shared. And so you're going to start to see those get matured and then used for specific applications. So it's definitely an advancement. But I would agree. Yeah, the hype curve is there. And again, back to my earlier comment, we're kind of focused on the specifics of what has been the case for a long time, which is tracking, tracing, and location. And there's certain technologies that do that well in a broad way, but we want to be more specialized in that.
I think it's interesting when you asked, people are afraid of AI, and I feel like that kind of breaks down to two fears. One, is AI going to take my job? Two, is AI going to enslave me? And the enslavement part is way off. Like the kind of AI that we're talking about is a generative, and they work on models, and it's doing this kind of deterministic algorithm where it just understands the next thing that should come up in a sentence or the next image that should pop up. And yes, the hype is real, and it can do awesome things, like Steve said, and it makes the things that our components are going into, the quality control and testing and all those things, a lot better. But the true AI that we know, like from what we've seen in movies, the decision making stuff, we're still a little ways off from it. But it's very cool technology, and it's gonna make this industry incredible.
Yeah, for sure. And there are some cool movies, like even though they're scary, like they're still worth watching and everything.
Yeah.
But I was talking to a company recently, and they have an AI product. I won't mention who it is, but they said that a lot of customers have been finding success with their product because they're mandated to use some form of AI. And they said, well, this looks like a good fit for us. And it just kind of seems odd. And Steve, we've talked about this at length over the years, but finding the right job for AI is the name of the game. You can't just, you can't force it.
Absolutely. For me, it begins at the top. Automation in general, and someone mentioned did it take my job here? Number one, with automation, we want to improve efficiency, do things that are hard, dirty, that humans don't want to do. Yep. So, you start the biggest benefits to automation aren't replacing humans. In fact, it's leveraging their power, what they're strong, and giving them better tools. I compare this to people like your roofing company replacing a roof. You want to create jobs, just tell the roofer to show up with no air tools and no battery tools, all the neat stuff we have that you didn't have 50 years ago, right? It's kind of the same with automation. And then when you break this down to AI, it's the same thing to me. AI shouldn't be used to just kind of replace stuff that's there because it's better. We've got great rules-based machine vision tools for gauging, very fast, very well developed for decades, that don't necessarily need improved. The real promise of AI is what we have troubles doing with those rules-based, where they're too rigid, and we should be looking at AI to do the things we can't do well in machine vision and carry it out in the future.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's more augmenting and supplementing, right? I think it's not maybe the necessary solution, but I think it has its place in there.
The other technology I want to ask about, and again, it's not quite machine vision, but there's a vision element. But I feel like I have to ask, humanoid robots. What's your take on it? Are they valuable now? Will they be valuable in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? What are your thoughts?
I think, like everything, again, you should look at these solutions and see what fits you. So humanoid robots are definitely a point of discussion around here because, here we're focused on efficiency and other things. And it's question here, within this industry, is this a gimmick or something? Is this something we really kind of need? In the home, there may be different answers than on the shop floor. But it's hard to ignore that some of these humanoid robots are getting very well developed, and there can be efficiency to form because they're able to walk between lines, walk up beside a human and do things. I think that's way out there in most cases. I think for this industry, that a purpose-built robot with a one of the common form factors, there's a reason we've done those, that they do those things well. In fact, being humanoid might be limiting. But again, when you think of the expanse and machine vision going where it didn't, there may also be applications where humanoid might be the right thing. Walk into a nuclear reactor, for example, to get down where we need to see or something like that.
Yeah, I think it falls into the neat things to show our kids. Certainly, these are ones that the kids love to see. I think at the end of the day, it's what is your metric of success, right? I mean, do you think it's scalable that they're running full factories, or do you think it's specific applications, as Steve said, for a nuclear reactor? And I think what time will tell how big that scale will grow. Do I think they will be present and utilized? Certainly, yeah. I mean, I think the technology's there. To what scale? I guess we will see.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, will humanoid robots be a thing in 3 to 5 years? I don't know, but I certainly hope so. I want them to do tasks for me. I want them to take out the garbage and fold laundry, and I hope that stuff. Yeah, I hope that stuff happens. And even with going back to the AI thing, we use AI for writing poems and music and all this fun stuff. But I wanted to do mundane tasks, and I think humanoid robots will be a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of funny though, because I think it was Automate maybe 8 years ago or so, and there was a report that came out basically saying, "Hey, robots aren't taking your job. In fact, it's the other thing. It's the other way around." And it almost seems now like people are sort of getting over the idea that robots are going to take jobs. But now comes this fear of, here's humanoid robots, here's AI, so here's a new thing to be afraid of. But now we have to kind of get over this hump as well. But it seems like people are starting to, and we'll see. Like you say, the humanoid thing is sort of like, we'll see.
Yeah.
They're definitely cool. And I'm with you, Georgie. I hope they are, right?
Yeah.
So
it's exciting, but the possibility.
Definitely.
Well, I think some of the biggest opportunities there for things like elder care or in-house and other things, right? We're using a subset of that in industrial, and in industrial, the social aspects are important. And I think that limits humanoid. If you're talking about, especially in elder care, a generation that didn't grow up around technology, didn't grow up around robotics, humanoid is a key factor. In fact, some of these already identify, you see the ones with faces and smiling reaction. That is important in those social aspects. To apply these technologies like we're talking about in AI, they can provide tremendous benefit, but they're not accepted well by the patient or young children in the home or other things.
Yep.
So I think, humanoid is a form factor overall in the grand context of how we as humans use robotics. They're really important. Within this industry, those social aspects are not as important on the production floor. Efficiency, movement, energy, those things count on the production floor.
Yeah. Excellent point. I want to ask about this September. A3 will host its first Focus conference, which is going to dive into intelligent vision and industrial AI. So we've talked about it a little bit thus far, but what are some topics you expect to be covered at that event? Like, what do you think that the hot topic, the hot trends will be at that conference?
Well, I think it's a great new conference, and fact that we as A3 and all of us are sitting on committees and boards here a little bit, that we look at these new areas and try and bring that out. So this again is much like you hear in the conversation. Us as an organization trying to target these areas and make events for them. So I think you're going to see things much like you're talking here. You're going to see people coming out and saying, look at what we can do with AI. Here's new applications. I'm a little remiss to venture at what you're going to see because it's going to be all cutting edge and new. It's a little hard to sit here and have to imagine all the broad scope of capabilities. I think it's going to be fantastic. It's going to start with what you see on the floor here today, but go all the way out to the periphery of what we're talking about with humanoid robots in other areas.
Yeah, I think the one thing we're going to start to see, and we've already started to see, I mentioned recently from Stuttgart to Embedded World in Nuremberg, it's one of the most rapid advancements in technology I've seen in 12 years in the industry. And what you're starting to see is on the embedded side of things, you're starting to see more collaboration. On the Gigi USB and industrial interfaces, we had standardizations. Now you're starting to see collaborations, which create that compatibility link. Big companies are coming into our space that were not there just a year or so ago. So the hardware, I think you're going to start to see more readily available. And then the software as well. I think you're going to start seeing that loaded on things, doing simple tasks. And there's also AI companies that are more ecosystem friendly. So they have silicon partners, they have camera partners, and they have software. So you're going to start to see more productization of this, more things that become accessible. So in our industry, particularly in the camera space, whenever you bring in a new technology, the adoption rate is dependent on ease of use, being able to get it running and being able to apply it to application. And we've been working on embedded vision since 2019. So you can be early to a technology, but I think now it's starting to mature as an industry, and I think that's a positive for all of us. So I think we'll start to see more talk about standardization there.
I hope one of the things that's included in the Focus Conference, which I'm excited about, is just a somewhat of a focus on getting the basics right. I mean, AI and things all are dependent on these models, and you need to make sure you understand optics and lighting and vision in general, which I'm sure Steve and Jason are going to agree with. Like, you have to get these things right for your models to work right and to use these technologies to a better extent. So I hope they talk about that and focus on that a little bit.
Pun intended, right?
Yes.
Focus on that, yeah. We've got a couple minutes left. Is there anything that you really want to get out there? Any predictions for the next couple of years? Anything you want to say in particular?
I think the next couple of years in particular are good for machine vision, good for this industry, again, helping reshore America here. So, I'm excited about our future and all these things that are coming.
Yeah, I was speaking with a friend, Bennett, the other day, and the one thing I think is a collaboration, right? Our industry, we go show to show and we see each other in the industry like this, and collaboration's always been a fabric and kind of DNA within the industry. And I think there's plenty of opportunities in the future, and I think that's going to be what's the most exciting in the next year.
I'm very excited for the next few years. I mean, just in terms of the manufacturing that's coming back to this country, and what that will mean for business in general, but also just from a consumer standpoint. Humanoid robots, self-driving cars, AR, VR, these things are going to explode over the next few years, and it's gonna really change our world. So looking forward to that.
Me personally, I'm looking forward to Georgie's laundry folding robot. I'm looking forward to that very much.
Me too.
Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And I would encourage everybody to check out more about the Focus Conference at automate.org, and thanks for joining us today.